Here we go. Here we go. We are live. Thank you so much for being here. Glad you're hanging out with us tonight. We're just pressing buttons here. Don't mind us. Glad you're hanging out on this fine Wednesday evening. We're a little bit, I don't know if fluster is the right word, but certainly we're not settled in the way we normally are because our younger son had a volleyball game.
Yeah.
Some good friends of ours were at the game to watch him play, and then we decided we were going to go out to eat, which was not that long ago, and we went out to eat, and then all of a sudden, we're at the restaurant, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm like,
nuts.
holy cow, we got to get going. We've got important places to be by 8 o'clock.
We have
So,
some other friends to meet.
yeah, we basically got home, got all the stuff together, and changed our clothes, and bam, here we are. So thank you so much for being here. Glad you're hanging out with us, and it'll be a disaster of a live stream. Well, how's that different than any other time? No, hopefully that is not the case. But thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Glad you're here. It's going to be awesome. We've got a subject that I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight, and that is especially for those of you who haven't kept cichlids or haven't kept them in a while, or maybe for a lot of people there are misconceptions about how cichlids are mean and they're aggressive and you need these big tanks and you can't keep them with other fish and you can't keep them in planted tanks. And for some cichlids, that is true. However, for a lot of cichlids, that is not true. And so we're going to give you a few examples. And I tried to include examples that maybe are a bit unusual and some that are going to be a little bit common, but some that will be unusual, I think, for your consideration, if you will. So, yeah, glad you're hanging out with us. Before we even get started, Leo, thank you so much for being here. He's celebrating 6 months of being a member. Thank you so much. Want to either do a Tropheus tank or either a gold ocellatus or Neolamprologus leylupi. Any advice on either? Don't see many videos on Tropheus. So it would be somewhat easier to keep the ocellatus and the leylupi together in a large enough tank. I don't think I would keep them together in a 20-gallon. The Tropheus need a larger tank, so they're going to need I would put them in at least a 75-gallon. They tend to be more aggressive than the other two. Well, I don't know. The ocellatus are pretty aggressive, too, for a small fish. But Tropheus can be a little bit more, there's more management that goes into it, especially with their potential aggression, their diet, more expensive. But I like the ocellatus. I like the leylupi. Yeah, the Tropheus, not as many videos out there. They're not quite as popular. So anyway, yeah, we're going to be talking about stuff like that today. And so places, things we've done, places we're going to be. Let's talk about videos first. On Sunday, I did a species profile of the lemon tetra. It's an awesome fish. If you haven't seen it yet, the tank was crazy. It was a tank that I saw at Aquashella. It was like 800 gallons. Yummy. It was packed full of lemon tetras. I think there might have been some harlequin rasboras in there, some angelfish. Even if you don't care about the lemon tetra, it's almost worth checking out the video to see how huge that tank was. It was crazy. Cool. So that was that. And then on Monday, on the Tank Talk podcast, the channel that John and I from KG Tropicals have, we did a podcast on, what makes someone an expert? What makes somebody reliable? How do you know you're getting reliable information from the internet or whatever source you're using? And so we spent some time talking about that. So if you haven't seen it yet, on the Tank Talk podcast, that's the name of the YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff, wherever you get your live stream or your podcast from. We're all over the place, but check it out if you haven't already done so. Today, what did you do on your channel, The Smallscape?
Oh, I thought it would be fun. You know when you start out planting a tank, it looks kind of puny, especially when we had to plant some of these gyno tanks. Well, I thought it would be fun to do a 2-month update on that tank in the back corner there, which is kind of one of our favorites. And just to see how much the plants have grown in 60 days. I called it 0 to 60.
Nice. And it did. I watched your video.
Really well.
I watched your video, and what
Thanks.
I found so interesting.
Did you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Oh, I thumb that bad boy all the way down. I'm like,
Gotta
oh
do
my
what you
gosh,
feel,
someone's filming my tank without, unbeknownst to me, but beknownst to them. No, it was interesting because I didn't realize how much the plants had grown, and I also didn't realize that the wood has already changed colors.
Oh yeah.
So that spider wood.
Very soon after.
Yeah, that spider wood, when you first put it in an aquarium, it has a very light look to it. And then after a while, after the water really starts to sink in, it gets a very dark brown. I did not realize that had happened, and I had no idea that the plants had grown as much as they have. So that was
The weird things you
yeah,
learn when you watch my
that
channel.
was definitely pretty cool. Want to say thank you again. Damaris, thank you so much for gifting 10 more primetime memberships. Thank you so much for doing that. That is so awesome. I'm very thankful that you do stuff like that. And hopefully the people who are the beneficiaries of the gift is they're also grateful, because that's a very giving thing to do. So thank you for that. And because of you, we have here, I'm going to squint again. We've got Bob, and we've got, let's see here, Rain and Whip. Whip was gifted a membership. What?
I know Whip.
We know that guy. And Craig. And let's see who else. James. And it started with a fish. And what do we got here? Mimic and Doxy. And oh my gosh. Okay, this is getting really hard for me to see. Martin. And let's, what was that? Poplin Creek Aquatics? Peplin? I can't see on the small screen. And this one, it doesn't show up very good. So it's kind of like a lose-lose when that happens.
How is this? Can you guys hear me okay? Because I
Oh,
tend to...
oh my gosh.
Am I off?
Holy cow.
That would have been a very relaxing live stream.
How's that? How's that
Is that better?
Oh my goodness. So anyway, can you say what you did on the small scape again on your channel?
I'm fake talking right now.
Nobody heard that because
I know, because I was fake talking.
Yeah, your volume was all the way off. So go ahead.
I was joking. So you guys probably didn't hear what my video was.
No.
The tank in the back is like one of our favorites, and I thought it would be fun to give like a 2-month update on how much the plants grew in. I thought it was just really kind of fun, and then you kind of elaborated, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
so
and I said
you're
some
all caught up.
things. Yeah. So anyway, that's what happened on the small scape. Let's see. Tomorrow, members videos. Sunday, we'll have a cool video out for you over here on Pride Time Aquatics. And then, next Monday, we've got another Tank Talk podcast coming out. So, Hip Hop, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Set up a planted tank last weekend. Squished some old media in, but now want to add more sand. Will leaving the thin layer of filter muck cause issues? If it's in the substrate, if you bury it, maybe, because those microbes need oxygen. They are aerobic. If a lot of it got picked up by the filter media, which is generally where I put, anytime I'm seeding a new tank with filter media, I just put that stuff right in the back of the hang-on back compartment, or if it's a sponge filter, the sponge just goes right in their canister, whatever. So that is generally where I would want to put that, and then you won't have to worry about it if you want to add some substrate. But if it's just, stuff that fell into the substrate and you cap it all with sand, that could be a potential issue. So be a little careful with that for sure. Hold on a second. Things are bouncing around everywhere. DC HVAC, thank you so much for the super chat. Love your channel. Really informative. You've helped me a lot to grow in the hobby. I have 5 tanks, just started up a 29-gallon with CO2. That's cool.
Wow, that's fun.
That'll be exciting. That opens up, obviously, a lot of avenues for you in terms of what you can grow, and now you can do those really highlight plants and the really cool stuff you see all over the internet. So congratulations. Thank you. Appreciate it. Land of videos, that's what we're doing. Places we're going to be. We're not going to be anywhere for a little while. We have a GCCA and Quad City swap on the 7th of April. So we'll be both in Northbrook, Illinois for the GCCA swap, and we will be in the Quad Cities, otherwise known as Davenport, Iowa. Davenport, right? Why does that sound weird to me? But it is. It's Davenport, Iowa, both on the 7th. And then the Greenwater swap is 2 weeks after that, so it would be the 20th of April. We will be in Tinley Park, Illinois at that swap. And we've got some pretty cool fish all chilling out right now in quarantine. I can look over there and I can see all their smiling faces because that's what fish in quarantine do. They smile at you if they're feeling good. And if they're not feeling good, they don't smile, but they're smiling. So some cool stuff coming pretty darn soon. So that is where we are going to be. What do you got?
Thank you, Debbie. Did you like my video today?
Oh,
thanks for watching it. Yeah. And Kat says, just fed a tank and saw my first shrimplet in that tank.
Very tiny and very
exciting.
cute.
They're so cute.
They are little bitty miniatures of the adults.
Yeah, you may not even see them at all. And
once you see them, you start to
Love.
realize why there are so many fish that are not shrimp safe,
Yeah.
right? Because it doesn't take a very large fish to take out a shrimp baby, because they can be hard to see, like straight up, holy cow, that's crazy.
Straight up, holy cow.
Steel Waves, thank you so much for being a member the last 25 months. So happy
Wow.
I've been a member for over 2 years. Any suggestions for a 3.5 gallon bookshelf tank? We've had those before. I know the volume for those of you who, what we're about to say, it's going to sound strange because the volume doesn't sound like a lot, right? 3.5 gallons, you can't put anything in a 3.5 gallons, most people would say. And often that's true if it's a standard size tank. But this is a bookshelf tank, and being a 3.5 gallon bookshelf tank, I believe those tanks are at least 2 feet long, from what I can remember, right? They're about the same length as a standard 20 gallon. Obviously not nearly as wide, not nearly as tall, but we have done in that 3.5 gallon, what have you done? Endlers, like a trio of endlers.
Yes, I did that. I did
Scarlet
Batis.
Yep, we did a Scarlet Batis in there, a pair.
And I've done the Hederaina formosa
Fleur-de-lis killie.
twice.
Yep,
And shrimp.
absolutely.
I had my yellow shrimpies.
Mystery snails, nearite snails. You could certainly do a betta in there if you wanted to. Again, that's a nice footprint. I know it's only 3.5 gallons, but like I said, it's about 2 feet long, maybe 6 inches wide, 6 inches tall, something like that. Maybe slightly more on one of those dimensions. I don't remember exactly, but that's a really cool tank. So keep with the nanofish. You could do certainly a half a dozen, 6 to 8 of any types of the rasbora, the severely small ones, like the Chiles, dwarfs, Mira / Phoenix rasbora are all possibilities as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So maybe mix those in with some shrimp. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Very nice.
Plants only. That could be fun too.
Yeah, you could even do like a sparkling gourami as a centerpiece. How cool would that be?
Oh,
Yep.
I need sparkling gourami back in my life. It's one of my favorites,
know,
and I don't
I've been-
have any right now.
I've been thinking about those lately.
Have
like
you?
maybe at some point
It's
we
been my
should
mind.
bring in the sparkling gourami again. I mean, how cool would a group of sparkling gouramis look in the nano tank over here too?
Oh,
Right?
and I would like croaking gouramis because I've never actually heard them croak.
Well,
I've never heard it, and I need to.
that's unfortunate for you.
I need to.
I will make croaking noises just randomly around the house. Leslie, thank you so much for being a member the last 10 months. Betta in lightly planted 10 gallon. What are the odds that a betta will accept a bristle nose? Snails are not an option due to soft water. All right, that's a legitimate reason. 10 gallon. So here's what I would do with this situation. I might not go with a bristle nose because they get pretty big. I mean, even though they're smaller plecos, the males are going to max out at really close to 5.5 inches, maybe slightly larger. And sometimes they will get a little bit more aggressive. The one that I would consider in a 10 gallon with a betta might be the clown pleco, because it's going to stay much smaller. It's only going to max out at around 3 inches or so. Really pretty fish. So take a look at the clown pleco, which will also do really well in your soft water. And that could be a really nice combination potentially. Shamu Aquatics, thank you so much for the super chat. We will be at Aquashella, Daytona in November. I have a vacation home in the neighboring town of Armand and planning to attend. Well, yes, that is the plan. We are planning to be at Aquashella in November in Daytona. Hope to see you there because that would be pretty cool. Yeah, if you've got a place around there, very convenient.
Very nice.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Jeff, thank you very much for the super chat. Why did my cribs leave their fry after a week and a half? Seems it's their first time. Will they get better with time? Do I remove the fry in a week? A lot of good questions there. So yeah, if it's the first time that they've bred, sometimes the parents aren't so good. And it's not just Kribensis. It can be a lot of different types of cichlids where they just they haven't figured it out yet. They haven't figured out how to care for the fry, so they kind of leave them go. If it is a breeding only tank where there was only the pair, obviously it wouldn't be as big of a deal as long as they don't turn on the fry and start eating them, which is pretty rare that would happen, because then you can feed them live baby brine and it's fine. If there are other fish in the tank, then obviously the parents have to protect the fry from the other fish. When they abandon them, all the fry go away. So yeah, there's a couple things you could do. You were thinking about, should you remove the fry? You can certainly do that. Take like a brine shrimp net or something, catch the fry, put them in a 5 gallon or a 10 gallon grow out tank if you wanted to do that. Feed them live baby brine in there. give the parents another try. The one thing I will say is be a little bit careful with Kribensis fry. I don't know why I couldn't say that word, just because they can be a little bit harder to move than other types of cichlids. So if you breed them and they start having really big, groups of fry, it can be tough to move them at a pet store. I know we generally speaking, we had Kribensis breeding at one point, and we couldn't move them at our swaps or anything. So, and even like when they get into even the regular meetings, you might be like, oh, here's a bag of 10 for $1 sort of thing. So it's fun to keep some of them, but just you almost want to kind of keep control of the number of fry that you're getting, because you just never know with them what's gonna happen. Yeah.
I have an announcement.
You have an announcement?
Yes. FYI, I'm going to be here for the entire stream.
You are, because with the game and everything, our schedule got all messed up. All right, I do want to get into the subject. So I want to talk about these little tiny cichlids that can certainly be a fish that you would keep in smaller tanks. And as we go through some of these examples, we'll talk about, we will talk about the appropriate size tank and whether or not they're safe for plants. And I think one of the main ones, and again, I'm going to start out with a couple common ones, but I promise you we're going to get into some fish that are not quite as common. Most of you know this guy here, and that is the German blue ram. It's a great fish. We've had them
so beautiful.
Every once in a while. In the past, we had them in our fish room. We tend not to keep them as much because they don't do all that great in our water, because our water it's got a pH of around 8 to 8.2, and our water hardness is it's on the harder side. So for those of you who have water that's closer to neutral or even acidic, and you have softer water, maybe in the mid to low single digits on your GH and or KH, this can be a potentially really good option. The only other thing that I will say about this fish in terms of water parameters is they like to be kept warmer. And so a lot of times when people are keeping German blue rams and they start having problems, if you're keeping them 76, 77, 78, that's a little chilly for them. And so they would prefer temperatures in that minimally like 82, 83 range would be pretty cool. But this fish is insane because that dorsal fin that you see there, it's always erect. It's always looking like it's showing off. And it's got this really great color. If you really want them to stand out and you really want to see a lot of that deep blue and deep yellow color, dark substrate. Dark substrate, dark background, it will be fantastic. And I know you love these fish from the beginning, and you were asking me all the time.
I always
want
wanted
German
them.
blue rams. I want German blue rams.
I wanted
and
them.
What did I always tell you?
No.
Well, I had a reason. It wasn't just like, no, not going to do it. The reason is for everything I just mentioned.
Because you're mean.
Our water parameters really weren't conducive for their optimal behavior. But this is a fish, again, they don't get very large, and that's the whole point. You're looking at a fish that's going to max out at maybe, I've seen them larger, but 2.5-ish inches in most aquariums. And so you're looking at a 20-gallon. You could certainly do a 20-gallon, keep one as a centerpiece. If you wanted to do a pair and try to breed them, again, you got to have that softer water, warmer, lower pH to really allow them to thrive. But this is a great fish. If you've got that smaller tank, you can see plants in the background of this picture. They do fine with live plants. They're really not diggers. They're not overly aggressive, at least towards other fish. I mean, if you kept a group of them in a 20, could they be a little bit aggressive towards one another? Possibly. But with standard community fish, and because they don't get very big, so some of your medium-sized rasboras, pretty much all your tetras are fine, your cory cats, coolie loaches, otocinclus, all of those would work really well. I will say that for people who like the rams, but again, you're having a problem like I would have with water parameters, and maybe you don't want to keep your tanks that warm, this is the direction to go. And we did a species profile on the Bolivian ram at one point. This is a fish we've had in our fish room a number of times. Now, the Bolivian ram will get larger than the German blue, but a 20 long could certainly be an acceptable tank. A 29-gallon is acceptable. The nice thing about the Bolivian ram, it doesn't need water that's as hard, and it doesn't need that low pH. And so we would keep and breed these fish at a pH of 8 with GH and KH closer to 10 degrees. So, and they're fine at around 77, 78 degrees, but just like the German blue, their dorsal fin is always standing up, and they always look like they're showing off. Really pretty fish. I will say this is another one, even more so than the German blue ram. Keep this fish on a darker substrate with a darker background. You're going to see a lot more red and a lot more blue. When you keep them on a lighter substrate, sometimes they tend to wash out a little bit and they don't get quite the same color, but darker substrates get them comfortable. They can be a little bit shy, right? Especially at first. Sometimes people throw both the German blue rams and these guys in their aquarium and they're like, man, they don't really come out that much. Once they get comfortable, once they realize, especially if it's the only cichlid in the tank, hey, this is my show, it's my tank, much better situation. So this is definitely one to consider. Now this next one, I know you're going to have something to say.
Don't I always?
Well, this one here, the Kribensis. Tell us your experience with the Kribensis.
I think cribs are beautiful. They're great parents, but don't put them in a tank where you like your scape.
So they dug a little bit for you.
Yes.
And I want to be clear, it wasn't that much. They will dig around structure. It's not like your typical Mbuna cichlid or South, your large South and Central American cichlid.
Rock like this way, rock like that way.
Well, because
so, yes.
they dug under the rock, because that's where they wanted to breed.
I'm just saying.
That's not their fault. You stuck a rock up totally vertically.
It's not their fault, and they're very beautiful, but just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And or scape with that in mind, and make sure that you can even glue your rocks to the bottom or whatever. Just make sure they ain't going anywhere because they're going to move them. Yeah,
but the cribs, again, another fish that stays small. You're looking at around 2.5, maybe 3 inches. Really great fish. Again, this is one just like the rams. You can put in a community tank. You did videos on the small scape where you showed your Kribensis in a 20 long. I think there were black neons in there.
Yep.
There was at one time a few other types of fish as well.
The what kind of cats?
Those wood, was it a wood cat? Shadow cat.
Shadow cats.
Yeah, the little, and we still have a couple of them. Little shadow cats were in there.
They're great at hiding, but
green neons were in there at one point. So this is a fish where, again, it's a community type fish. Males and females both look great. The males have what you're seeing in this picture is a male, lot prettier dorsal fin and tail fin, but the females a really, really deep purple belly. And when they're fired up, especially if you've got a pair in there, or at one point in a 75 gallon, we had a whole mess load. I think we had probably like a dozen Kribensis in that 75 gallon. And the females would all kind of, they formed a hierarchy just like the males did, and they would show off. I mean, the color change on these fish is about as fast as you can make it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they can go from looking moderately pretty to, wow, spectacular inside of seconds. And then a few seconds later, you're like, well, where did that go? It was, you're getting your picture, getting your phone out, getting ready to take a picture. Like, okay, am I losing my mind? It went from,
where'd the pretty fishy go?
Went from, hey, this is pretty cool, to holy cow, this is insane, to, oh, you're back to the way you were again. Like, did I just imagine that? No.
Trickster.
Yeah. Again, this is a fish where you can put in a planted tank. This is a fish where if you've got a 20 gallon, you're in good shape. I know a lot of people who breed will keep a pair in a 10 gallon with a little bit of structure. And the question came up earlier, in terms of their parental care. Once they figure it out, the downside, if there's a downside to the Kribensis, is once they figure out how to breed, they really do like to breed. And when they do, they start having batches of fry, 30, 40, 50, and then they can be a little bit tough to move to the pet stores and stuff like that. So you just have to be a little bit careful there. And by the way, there are other types of Kribensis cichlids, other species that are very, very striking. Now, I'm curious if you remember this next one.
Okay.
Do you remember this guy? This is the keyhole cichlid.
I was going to say, is that keyhole cichlid?
Yeah, so there's a keyhole cichlid. Out of the ones that we're talking about, is probably the one that's going to get the largest. Maybe you're looking at around 3.5, 4 inches or so.
But what tank was he in?
Well, actually, we had these in a 75. You don't need a 75 gallon. Again, these are cichlids you can keep in smaller tanks that are peaceful. And
down there?
Yeah, it was right down over when we had the 75 over here.
Back corner? Like the bottom corner? So
we had them in a 75, and it's just a great, relatively peaceful cichlid. They don't dig a whole lot. They more or less they more or less figure out their hierarchy. I didn't find them to be particularly aggressive with one another. They pretty much ignored other fish, and so your neon types of fish, that size, generally fine. The cory cats, again the otos or clown plecos, if you want to keep those. They would be a really good tank mate with maybe some pearl gouramis, but a lot of the schooling fish that are neon Tetras sized or larger are going to be fine. She asks, are the keyhole cichlids as sensitive as rams? Not at all. I found the keyhole cichlids, just like the Kribensis, extremely hardy fish, and I didn't mention that about the Kribensis, so I'm glad you brought that up. But the Kribensis, and the keyhole cichlids, these are two types of fish that are very, very resilient and will accept a wide range of water parameters. So they're great fish. I would say of the ones we've talked about so far, maybe they don't have as much color as some of the other ones do, and this picture here is showing them as this kind of like this gold color. This is one where I would actually want to keep on a lighter substrate. I think you see more of this color on a lighter substrate with maybe a lighter background, where when we had them, they were on a big surprise, black substrate, black background. They tended to wash out a lot and look a little bit more brownish, a little more dirty than they do in this picture here, but certainly worth a try. Guy, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Currently setting up my 40 breeder. I plan on using sand and lava rock with stratum on top. Should I be worried about cyanobacteria? I've used all different types of sand. I found the only type of sand where I got any cyanobacteria was the pool filter sand. But it's just not something I really worry about. As long as you're keeping your nutrient levels in check, you're keeping your lights on for the proper amount of time, your light intensity is not overwhelming, the cyanobacteria is not necessarily going to be a big deal, right? Lava rock, is that going to be in the substrate? So is that going to be a lower substrate level? If so, then yeah, that would be something you'd want to keep capped with sand for sure, because it can be a little bit sharp for fish, especially anything that's going to be spending time at the bottom. So yeah, keep that in mind. But yeah, that sounds cool. All right, this next one, we've had these two. I don't know if you remember. In fact, I think we did. We had the keyhole cichlids with these guys. It's the Curviceps. So talked about the Curviceps.
I don't remember them.
Well, there you go. They look like this. They tend, I think this picture is probably the saturation is turned up a little bit because they tend to be a little bit more brownish tan, at least the ones that in the setups that we were keeping. This is another fish. Stay small. You got a 20 gallon, you're in good shape. For the most part, they leave each other alone. For the most part, they ignore other fish. They don't dig. You can keep them in a planted tank. Not going to have any problems there. These ones, I think, of the ones we've talked about, are actually, they might be the most difficult to find these days, which is interesting because they used to be really easy to find and not as much anymore. So you can go to any pet store for the most part and find German blue rams. You can go anywhere, almost anywhere, find Bolivian rams. Kribensis are ubiquitous. Thank you very much. Wanted to throw that word in there to make me sound smarter. Keyhole cichlids, again, they used to be common, but I still see them from time to time. The Curviceps, maybe not quite as much, but it's a really pretty, very peaceful cichlid, smaller tanks. You're in good shape. Now, this next one. I've just got one example here, but there are a million examples because I wanted to give you more examples, but full disclosure, because we were running so far behind with the time we got home, I didn't get a chance to give you as many pictures as I wanted to, and that's the Apistogramma. All right, this is Agassizi. There are so many different types. We've kept this fish, we've kept Cockatoides, Borellii, Panduro, which is the one I really wanted to show you. I was going to look through my old videos and try to get you the video of them. That's my personal favorite, is the Panduro. In fact, we've literally got 60, 80 of them in the fish room right now, the Apistogramma Panduro. Amazing fish. This is also an amazing fish. Now, small, stays very small. Pistos will range anywhere from, like the Panduros are probably one of the smaller ones, around 2.25, 2.5 inches. Some of them might get to around 3-ish or so. I shouldn't say almost all, but most of the ones that are readily available are going to show insane colors and have the awesome fins. There are Apistos out there. You got to be careful because sometimes with the Apistos, you might find yourself buying rare Apistos that basically don't have that much color. I mean, that's one where you got to be really careful because people will sound like, oh man, this Apisto doesn't come around very often. Here's a wild type one. You're like, okay, well, this is basically a brownish fish, even, with the exception of when they're fired up ready for mating. Otherwise, I've got a brown fish. So But the standard ones, like the Agassiz, Cockatoides, Borellii, Panduro, the fire reds that we used to have, all great fish. Stay small, easily something. We've bred the Agassiz and the Cockatoides in hard water, so our water close to a pH of 8, and on the, like I said, the harder side at a temperature of around 77, 78 degrees. The issue that we tend to have is when we are breeding them, we often get fry, and then because of our water parameters, I think at least the Agassiz and the Cockatoides and the fire reds, and the Borellii did horrible in our water. They kind of just fade away after about 6 months. So this is not necessarily a fish that I would want in hard water with a high pH. But if you're closer to neutral or on the acidic side and your water is on the softer side, this can be a really, really nice option. Tank size, you could put, depending on the type of fish, like the Panduro, I wouldn't have a problem putting them in a 10-gallon. The Panduro are awesome because the males get this really nice blue color and the females get a really pretty yellow color. One of the things with the Apistogramma is often the females, they don't show a ton of color, but the males are the ones that you see here that look amazing. With the Panduro, the females have a really nice yellow. It's really kind of vibrant. And they always show more color when they're in breeding dress or when males or females are trying to mark their territory and kind of protect their territory. So I would say this is a great fish if you are certainly closer to neutral or less. They can be expensive, right? Depending on where you get them, depending on the strain of Apistogramma. It's not unusual for a pair to be in a pet store, what, 25, 30 bucks, sometimes more, again, depending on the strain. But this is a great fish. Planted tanks are fine. Smaller fish are fine. You know, your rasboras are mostly in good shape here because these are very small cichlids. Of all the cichlids that we talk about today, are these the small? No, they're not the smallest, but they're getting close to being the smaller ones, at least to the ones that we're talking about today. So, yeah, very, very, very pretty fish. Do you have a favorite Apisto? Because I know at one point you wanted them.
I did. Name the different kinds.
So
I don't recall which one, but one of them.
This is Agassiz, Cockatoides. So you got like the triple reds. You got the fire red. That's the like albino looking one with the red fins. The Panduros are the ones we have in the fish room right now. What else have we had? Oh my gosh, we had the Mendezi. Oh, yeah. That was another one that did actually.
That's really pretty too.
Those fish lived forever. We had Apistogramma Mendezi. I did a species profile on those. And when I got them from the GCCA swap, I remember that everybody's saying, hey, if you're going to keep these fish, you got to have soft water, you know, put peat in the filter and really try to get the water hardness down and get the pH lower. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I brought them home. I threw them in a quarantine tank. I was like, all right, maybe I'll deal with water parameters later. And I never touched the water. It was always our water. And they were the Apistos that lived the longest for us by far, even more than the Panduro.
Wow.
So, but they are very hard to find. The Mendezi are, I can't remember the last time I've seen them, but they're really cool. And in that video I did, I got this awesome picture. It was like a dream. Two males were flaring up at each other in a 23-gallon bow front. It's the thumbnail.
Click. And
it was just like, oh man, it would look so cool. Vito says Apistogramma McMasteri. Yes, absolutely. Elizabethae is another one. Yeah, there's a lot of different types. So if you're looking for a small, relatively peaceful, community type cichlid that is going to be okay in a planted tank, they're not going to dig things up, this is a good choice. This next one, I would be willing to bet a lot of people haven't kept, and maybe some people haven't heard of. All right, so these these next couple are going to be a little bit more unusual.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember this guy.
I do.
Now, my guess, hold on, right now, most of you are saying, electric blue acara, that's not a small cichlid that can be kept in a small tank. That would be true, except this is not an electric blue acara. This is Nanocara anomala. And what's exciting is I've actually seen these now, at least the last few months, popping up on lists again.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's a fun fish too.
This one you've got to be a little bit careful with though. One, they often show more yellow than what you're seeing in this picture. Two, of the fish we're talking about today, this is probably the most aggressive. They sometimes will not tolerate one another well. This would be a fish where if I wanted to keep a group, I would actually consider a 55 gallon or a 75. But if you just had a pair or you wanted one as a centerpiece, and a 20 gallon would be more than sufficient. So again, the advantage here is you're getting something that looks like an electric blue car that has this really vibrant color in a roughly 2 to 2.5 inch package. Plant safe, mostly fish safe, but they do have a little bit of an attitude. I kept them in our harder water. I know that Kasha at one point, she was keeping these fish. I think she actually even bred them in Chicago water.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And I know that they were floating around once again at the GCCA rare fish auction. I thought I saw them pop up at some point in the last year, but like I said, they're starting to come back around. This is one, if you see at the pet store, they're not going to be cheap, but it certainly could be something to consider because, like I said, we had these in a 20 long. I kept them as a group, and that was probably a mistake that I made in a 20 long because that was how I learned, wow, the males are a little bit harder on one another than I anticipated they would be. So the next one is, I think, possibly I saved like some of the bestest kind of for last. This bad boy.
Yes, and I could have had my own little group. Remember for my 22?
Yes.
I was slated to get them, and then
we had
nope.
Well, no, that was when we were breaking down this side. So
I know.
In one of the fish room tours that I did, and I don't remember if it was in 2021 or 22, I had a 10 gallon filled with these things in quarantine. These fish stay small. This is the checkerboard cichlid. This is another one of these fish where it will accept a decently wide range of water parameters. Ideally, be closer to neutral. Water in the maybe middle to upper single digits. We kept them in our Chicago water. They did awesome, and the colors. Oh my gosh! If you saw that video, if you went back and looked at our fish room tours, like I said, I wish I could remember which part it was in 2021 or 2022. But that 10 gallon I had, the fins on this particular example are not fully developed. They get this nice long trailers. They're a thinner bodied fish, really quite peaceful. Like I said, we had a dozen of them in a 10 gallon. Not that I would necessarily do that long term, but in the quarantine tank, they were in that quarantine tank a lot longer than I thought they would be, for months. And they were fine. They just kind of hung out with each other. Again, not a digger, not going to be a plant eater. Gonna ignore other fish. If there's any knock on this fish, it might be that sometimes they can be a little bit reclusive, right? A little bit shy. They're certainly going to be, in terms of expense, out of this group, probably the most expensive. Right?
Really?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I've seen them go for $20 a piece. So when
No
we got,
kidding.
yeah, they can be.
Well, they're worth it because
They
they're
are
real
worth-
pretty.
And by the way, there are different. This is, oh my gosh, dichrosis. So there are different species, but this is absolutely one of those fish that is stunning. And if you run across them and you want a small fish, I wouldn't have any problem keeping a pair of these in a 10 gallon. If you want to mix them with other fish, then certainly a 20. You want to talk about a centerpiece fish, they're going to stay pretty close to the lower levels of the tank. Most of these cichlids do, but these guys in particular. And what's fun about them is you just kind of see them sneaking around the rocks and the wood and the plants. Such an amazing fish. It really is.
Oink is here.
What's
Everybody
up? What's
say
up?
hi, Oink.
What's going on?
And Zen Ginger and New York Gold.
Wow, cool.
That's a name, a flashback.
Yeah, glad you guys are hanging out. All right, I got one more, and then we're going to start taking questions too.
Come on already.
Hey, because I want to switch gears a little bit, and this is going to be the representative for a big group of fish, and of course, that is the shell dwellers. So this is a picture of a multi. We have the multis in our lowboy. We've had them in a 40 breeder. This is a shell dweller. Shell dwellers generally stay very small, anywhere from an inch to maybe an inch and 3/4. Now this is a fish that's going to thrive in your harder water with those higher pHs. It's a Lake Tanganyikan cichlid. I don't generally keep the shell dwellers, especially if I want to breed them. I don't keep them with other fish because they will tend to protect their fry a little bit more aggressively. So unless I've got, like in the 75 gallon right over here, I've got Similis, which is very similar to the multis. I've got a group of Similis there, but if you keep them as a species only tank, a lot of breeding, a lot of activity, a lot of community going on within the tank and a hierarchy that they figure out. They can certainly communicate with one another in what looks to be an aggressive way, but for the most part, if you've got a lot of shells and you give them some space and some structure, they figure it out mostly right away. I haven't had really any aggression issues, and I've kept these fish in, like shell dwellers in general, in anywhere from a 10-gallon to the 50-gallon low boy to the 75-gallon, everything in between. And there are some more aggressive shell dwellers like the gold ocellatus, the meleagris are pretty aggressive, but if you stay with the similis or the maltese like you're seeing here, even the brevis for the most part will get along just fine. We've bred those. Signatus, we've had the calypteris, which is an insanely cool shell dweller, but we've had a bunch of them. Really cool fish.
Brian says, hope you don't take this the wrong way, but Jason, you have the perfect voice for my sleep time.
Well, don't worry. I don't take it the wrong way, and I can get a much more sleepy voice like, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Glad you're here today, and we would like to thank you for attending the Primetime Aquatics live stream. Today, we'll be talking about cichlids, small ones that stay inside small tanks, planted, yes, peaceful, yes. We'd also like to say thank you to everybody for being here, all of our moderators, everybody for the super chats, and all of the gifters, and especially all you lurkers there. Alpha Fish Aquariums, thank you so much for the super chat. Okay, I'm going to go back to my regular voice, but anyway, I hear that all the time because I teach a lot of hybrid online classes, and
people do get sleepy.
And I do obviously a lot of videos for them, and a lot of my students will tell me, not only am I learning something, but when I need to go to sleep, I put the videos on, and I usually fall asleep not that long after. So, you know what? For those of you, you're tired. It's been a long day. You're hanging out with us. You deserve a little shut-eye, and if I can help you with that, if we can help you, just drift off to sleep, and then you wake up, and the screen just says, live stream ended. Hey, so be it. Alpha, thank you so much for the super chat. Sorry, I'm a little late. Glad I made it here for the live stream. Love all the recent videos and still can't get over the fish gallery. New bucket list thing I have to do. Much love. Well, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Yeah, the fish gallery. I'm glad it is mostly done. So we've moved on to other things. So this past weekend, it's still related to fish keeping. Oh my gosh. How long did we spend in the garage? Do you want to tell everybody the length of time that we were out there?
I think I lost track after like 10 hours.
It was a very long time.
It was long and grueling.
I'm embarrassed to say, well, and that's actually, hold on.
Stuff.
That was a 10-hour day, but that was after I had spent 5.5 hours out there by myself the previous weekend. So the garage got a little bit out of control. And a lot of it was because we have an excessive amount of driftwood and rocks. And we found a whole bunch. Can I just tell you a story real quick? I found cases of rock that was kind of stacked up against a wall behind some other stuff. I opened up one of the cases, and what's in there? Petrified rock. She's like, petrified rock?
Petrified wood.
No, it was petrified rock. It's the rock that's got that petrified look. It's not wood.
I call it petrified wood.
It's not. It's petrified rock. And anyway, I have been wanting to do a scape with this stuff, and I couldn't find it when I wanted. I didn't know we had it. And I couldn't find it at the pet store when I wanted to do it. And I opened up this case, and there it is. And even better, when we set up this tank, and maybe it's probably a good thing that we didn't find any more of the Seiryu stone, but we have more than I thought we did. So we spent an extremely long period of time cleaning out the garage, organizing things, getting the wood and the rocks back to where they need to be, getting stuff in totes, and we still have more work to do this weekend. It's going to be awesome, but that's the life of fish keeping.
And I have to work on my studio.
And you have to work on your studio. That is true.
Brian, I blame Joanna.
Yeah.
I'll take that, Brian.
So been a lot. Yeah, because your studio wall is done. So that's the other thing too. The studio wall is complete. Looks fantastic. And now it's just a matter of
gutting it.
Well, not gutting it. It's
well, I mean like gutting it because everything that's in the walls and in cubby holes and in drawers, you know what I mean, has to come out. And I have to go through it. I'm not keeping everything, but I do like my knickknacks, bric-a-bracs, containers, pots.
Yeah.
Doodads. So yeah.
You like to collect stuff, that's for sure.
I am a collector.
That's one way to put it. There's another way to put it. Starts with an H, ends with an orders.
Order. Yes, I know. I've got that kind of
gene. genome.
Yeah.
It's not even a gene, it's a whole genome, hoarder genome.
Yeah, I got to pull everything out and I got to paint the walls. That means I need to decide what color.
Well, I can decide that for you. Just keep it the way it is, white. And then you
No,
can,
because some of it's not even, it's just primed.
yeah, that's the latest
It's
thing.
natural.
The latest
natural
thing is
primed.
just to leave the walls primed and just call it your prime wall. See, that would fit in with my name too,
Sure would.
right?
You betcha.
It would be an ode to the channel. Yeah. Let's see here. Rain says, Joanna, just converted 3 tanks to live plants. Had no idea how addictive looking for new plants can get, and how satisfying it is to watch plants thrive and grow.
Isn't that fun when you don't kill your plants? So
It is
cool.
fun, and it is fun to watch them grow.
Yeah.
It is very rewarding for people who haven't kept live plants. The first time you do that, it can be a little bit stressful as well, because you're like, hey man, I gotta keep all these things alive. And sure as heck, when you do, it's very cool.
New York Gold says, when you guys are done, my basement could use some attention.
Well, when we're done, that's that could be a long time. Thing says small cichlids as in dwarf cichlids. Yeah, it means the same thing. Small cichlids, dwarf cichlids, it's all the same.
Oh, Hip Hop Hillbilly says, anyone have experience with keeping pea puffers and Venezuelan orange cories together in a 20?
Haven't done it, but I don't see why it can't be done.
Yeah, I don't see that either of them would give either a hard time.
No, pea puffers, especially if they're accustomed to going for their own snails, the cory cats aren't going to eat them. Pea puffers aren't going to chase after the cory cat food unless maybe you're throwing some bloodworms in there. And the pea puffer might be like, I'll have one, but it'll take me like 6 hours to eat it. So they're not going to compete for food. Our pea puffers also liked, or at least the female liked live baby brine. The male wouldn't touch it. So
yeah, he was.
cory cats
so
aren't going to go
cute.
out of their way to try to track that stuff down. So maybe there's a chance that you get an angry pea puffer that likes to fin nip, and the cory cats are like, hey man, I can't deal with this, but it's not something I think I would worry about. Rules says, any ideas for a 15-gallon Fluval Flex pea puffers betta? Now that's a combo I would be more careful with, because I could see a pea puffer maybe being enticed to nibble on a betta fin, maybe.
Or just be
maybe.
a little like ornery.
Yeah.
A little
I mean,
ornery.
you could try it, but I don't know. I'm not so sure. And if you get a mean betta, that could be a disaster too. Because if you get a betta that becomes territorial, that pea puffer, it's game over, unfortunately, because the betta is going to harass it. And the pea puffers are very, very slow, and they would get stressed out, start to hide, not eat, and then not be with you any longer. So I don't know. I don't think I would keep them together. And maybe that's not what you're saying. Maybe you're saying pea puffers, betta, or something else. But both of them are certainly options. I mean, you could do one or the other. You know, I like keeping female bettas more, I think. I know they don't have the same flowing fins, but you wind up with more options with the female bettas because the fins are shorter, I think.
Frequently.
And with the Fluval Flex, if you are not going to be messing with the filter that comes with that and trying to slow down the flow, the female bettas might be an easier choice and not have to fight the flow. Otherwise, you got to figure out a way to kind of slow it down for a male betta.
Oink says, how about light pink walls to match the acrylic sign I sent you for your collection?
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Oh.
Why is that not?
Because remember I told you you needed to set it up and we put it safe.
It's right there.
We have it.
Oh my God. No, it's right. I brought it down. It's
Why
right.
don't you show it? We'll grab it.
Well, I
and show
can't
it.
because it's buried under that thing. So
We're helpless.
yeah.
Anyways.
It's right over here, but it's not in view. And I meant to put it up there. So
He's been like decorating and stuff. It's so cute. So
yeah, I added the little puck lights there, but they're not really doing
not really.
what I
They
wanted
kind
them
of
to
light up
do.
your legs over
Yeah,
there.
it's like, okay, now you can see my legs
But
illuminated, and the prime time
drawing,
thing is kind of
It just looks like a circle. It looks like you're highlighting a circle, an oval on the wall. But anyways, that would be a fun idea. And I've seen some cool rooms with like a really pretty, like pink. My sign will definitely have a place of honor. But I'm thinking darker. I don't know if y'all are familiar with moody, dark academia sort of vibes. It may be that. It could be a kind of a medium academia. But yeah, you don't know anything about that. But it's okay.
Scotty says pro Grammies and multis in a 55. I wouldn't. If I were going to do multis in a 55, I would pick, and you've got some options in a 55, but I would pick other Lake Tanganyikan fish. such as Cyprichromis. So we've done videos on Cyprichromis leptosoma. Great fish for that mid and upper water. That would go great in a 55 with the Maltese. You could do some of the rock dwellers like the Lelupi or the Ornatus. You could do even, let's see, some of the other feather fins. I mean, a 55 is long enough. If you look up Lake Tanganyika feather fin cichlids, very expensive, often extremely colorful. But that's the direction I would go. I would not generally mix non-cichlids with Maltese because there's a tendency for the Maltese to beat up the non-cichlids. The only thing that I might remotely try in a 55 with Maltese might be some type of a rainbow fish, like the dwarf rainbows or the Bosemani or something like that. Keep in mind, if you do that, they're going to eat some of your multi fry. So the Maltese are going to try to protect the fry, but the rainbows, very, very fast fish, and they will pick them off from time to time. Generally speaking, I don't expect a lot of fry in tanks where I have any type of mixed community, but that I would rather go either feather fins or the Cyprichromis than try to do a non-cichlid in a 55. This is a good question that I probably won't be able to answer all that well, but we're going to take it a different direction. Sheena Family says, what size sump would I need for a 55 gallon? I wouldn't put a sump with a 55 just because for me, if I'm doing a full sump system, I would need at least like probably a 240 gallon or above. I would probably opt for, actually I would opt for 2 hang-on back filters because they're going to be really easy to deal with. So maybe like a couple Seachem Tidal 55s or a couple you could do Aqua Clear 50s if they'll fit over the rim of the tank. You could do the Marineland Pro 275s or maybe even 375s, one on each side to keep the water flowing. If you don't like that look, then I would go canister filter. I might do a Fluval 307 or a Fluval 407. Just if you want that real quiet look and the very minimalist look, that would be the direction I would go. But I don't think I would do a sump. Sumps for me are for big tanks. Hip Hop, thank you so much for the super chat. Centerpiece fish for River Rock Bottom 10 gallon.
Ooh, fun.
It's a good one.
River Rock
Centerpiece fish for a 10 gallon. Well, I have a couple of thoughts. Do you have any thoughts that you would like to share with the class?
Not yet, I'm thinking.
Okay. So my thoughts immediately centered around for a 10 gallon, you've got the peacock gudgeon, which wouldn't mind the River Rock Bottom. You've got the sparkling gourami. That might be pretty cool. You could do a honey gourami as well. You could do either a yellow or the standard orange variety of the honey gourami. That would be pretty cool. You could potentially do, I don't know what else you're going to keep in that tank, but again, some of the fish we talked about, like a checkerboard cichlid or the Nanacara anomala, just one. Don't put more than one in a 10 or you're going to have a problem. I think either one of those might be an option as well. Do you have anything you want to add?
You could do scarlet batis.
That would be interesting. Yeah, depending on what other types of fish you've got.
Mm-hmm.
Live foods, they generally like the live baby brine, but yeah, that's actually really nice. That's a really nice suggestion.
Well, and actually going to like kind of coordinate with the River Rock Bottom, you could do something like pea puffers because of the same coloring, don't you think?
You know what I just forgot? We didn't even talk about it, was the Nanochromis splendens.
Oh, yeah. Oh, those stinkers.
No, they're awesome.
They are.
Oh my gosh, that was a big miss on my part.
Way
Holy
to go.
cow. So for those of you who know about small cichlids, I failed to mention Nanochromis splendens, an insanely awesome fish. That would be another one for that 10 gallon. That'd be really cool. That fish is ridiculous. And I forgot to even mention it.
Way to go. Lady Rorschach says, I want to make a tank with species of fish from the Orinoco River. Are there any in the hobby? Tribute to both Anya. Oh, I didn't know about Anya. And Myrtle. Thank you.
You know what? Can we stop for a second? And yeah, so I don't know how many of you know or are aware Myrtle Singh. He was a moderator for our channel. When we first got our live streams up and running, it was Myrtle, it was Mary Page, I think Oink was here. And Myrtle was instrumental in helping us with our live streams. He did an absolutely outstanding job, and I just found out from Fishery that Alex, that he had passed in the last day. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. It was really sad news. Myrtle was, to me, one of those people who was just part of this community. I'm sure some of you know who he is. He was, you could usually find him on some of the live streams throughout the week. He was an outstanding musician. He was
Very
a young guy,
knowledgeable.
and he was a special human being. And it was, when I heard that he had passed, that was rough news. So to Myrtle's family, friends, people knew him. We're praying for you. We're sorry that happened, because that was not something that I expected to have to hear this morning. So don't remember what the question was, but the Orinoco River. Yeah, there's plenty of fish. I don't know.
What fish are from the Orinoco?
I don't. Usually they're all messed up in my brain. I just say regions, more than I focus. I'm not that dialed in with the specific rivers. Zen says Myrtle passed on the 16th. Okay, so it was a few days ago. I just saw the announcement today. He was 20. Yeah, he was 21. You never would have known he was 21 just by the way he carried himself, the knowledge base that he had, the way that he acted.
Very knowledgeable.
Yeah, just awesome human being. Okay, let me see here.
Ram.
What?
What fish is from there?
Again, I don't keep track of the rivers, so I don't know. Oh, the green neon.
Yes.
There you go. Rams and green neons. There's a
You don't
combo.
need any more.
Yeah. What
There you
more
go.
could you ask for? Asher's Art says, would you recommend ember tetras or chili rasboras more? Well, that's a great question. In our 125 back there, we've got about 40 or 50 ember tetras. The chili rasbora is, I think when I did the rasbora thing, I know it made the top 5 because it was the top 5 rasboras in the world. I think I had it at 1 or 2. It was somewhere in there, like 1, 2, or 3. I kind of go back and forth between the chili rasbora, the rummy nose rasbora, are probably my 2 favorites. I don't think I'd be able to decide. Maybe it's just get both. They're going to complement one another. The chili rasbora is going to have that dark red and a purpley color. Embers are going to be orange. They get along fine together. We've kept them together before without any issues. If it's a 10-gallon, maybe you want to pick one. But if you got like a 20-gallon or larger, knock out like 8 or 10 of each. They will be fine together. But I'd probably, if I had to pick one, because I'm not going to cop out, if I had to pick one, I would probably lean toward the chili rasbora. But they're going to be a little bit more expensive and maybe sometimes harder to find. I haven't had good luck. I like to bring them in once every few months, and for the last 6 months, I have not been able to find them, which is frustrating because I always want to bring them in. What we do have in our fish room is a dwarf rasbora, which is very similar looking, very cool fish. We've got a couple hundred of those.
Very personable.
Yeah, probably the most personable out of those, of the phoenix, the dwarf, and the chili.
Yeah.
The dwarf rasbora is the most personable one. All right, let me see here. Jason says, will a solo tetra be okay without a school and a community tank? It's not ideal. We all wind up sometimes after we've kept a group of tetras together, and over time we start to lose one here, one there, and a few years later, like, okay, I've got this one random black phantom tetra, or here's my one ember tetra. But to start out that way, we definitely want a group, right? That's most sources will recommend keeping at least a half a dozen. I like to do more than that if I can. So usually when I'm planning out a group, like again, for the Nano 125, not everybody's going to do that. I'm right back here. I think we've got like I said, 40-ish or so ember tetras. We have at least another 30 or 40 of the diamond head neons. So I like to keep them in bigger groups. Even if it was a 10-gallon, I would rather have a smaller tetra or rasbora, but be able to keep 6 or 8 than keep one. What winds up happening with tetras that are kept individually is a few things can happen. One, they can get very shy and very timid and like to hide. 2, sometimes they can get fin nippy and they turn slightly more aggressive than they normally would. And then almost always they just don't seem to live quite as long when they're on their own. So I would really try as best you can to keep them groups. Larger the better, provided that you accommodate their tank size. Yes.
From Thomas. Sorry, but Joanna is correct. It is petrified wood. So called because it is wood that has been turned to rock by minerals replacing the wood material.
That is all true. I will grant you that. The box said petrified rock, but, I was just going by what the box said.
It is.
Yeah.
It's petrified and it is rock. There's just some words in between.
Hey, petrified rockwood.
Thank you, Thomas. I can
Yeah.
sleep tonight.
We'll
knowing
all
that.
sleep better with her knowing that, or at least she will.
It's always nice to be once,
Yeah.
like once a month.
Yeah.
You know what I
She
mean?
says-
Just like every couple months.
I have 7 chili rasboras with a betta and some dwarf cories. Are they dwarf cories? They are all so cute with tiny leaf plants. Yeah, that's cool. Be a little bit careful. Watch that betta when it gets full grown around them chili rasboras. Sometimes when they grow up together, it winds up being okay. It would be one of
Really?
those things where if you had a full grown betta though, and you just chucked in the chili rasboras like later
king.
on.
A king betta
Oh,
with
yeah, I'd be like, "Hey,
baby
man."
chilies.
Yeah, I'd be like, hey,
Bye
thanks for the
bye.
feeder fish. But you'd be surprised. There is this, I absolutely know it to be true, that sometimes when fish grow up together, they will not eat the inhabitants. I have numerous examples of this. I had a 35-gallon hex. I tell a story all the time. Most of you know, like, oh, here comes a 35-gallon hex story again. Back when I was in my late teens, and in that tank, don't judge me, bro. This was the 90s, maybe early 90s. I had a Jack Dempsey in that tank, along with a convict cichlid and a 35 hex. Yes, I know. I understand. That's not at all recommended. Well, they were in that tank, lived in that tank together for years and years and years. Every once in a while, they'd lock mouths, and then they would go to the separate tiny sides of their aquarium. There was a big castle in the middle. But the point of the story is I had neon tetras in that tank, and they never touched them.
Really?
They never touched ever. And I mean, the Jack Dempsey and the convict were big fish. They got to be in that 35-gallon hex at least 6 inches. Never touched a single neon. However, I would throw those little rosy minnows in there. Boom, all gone within 10 minutes.
Really?
You would think that would trigger something. We're like, oh, I'm just going to keep eating until I eat the neons. They never touched them.
They had an appreciation for beauty.
Well, but not only that, in the
Friends, not
125,
food.
people, I mean, I've seen this thing. I've shown it a million times. In the 125, we had the Oscar, and we had Timmy, which was an 18.5-inch Nile tilapia. Huge fish. And that tank bred peacock cichlids like crazy, and they would survive. And there was one of our most productive breeding tanks, and they never really touched the fry.
That's true.
They just ignored them. They were well fed, and I don't know if it's because they just kind of all grew up together. There were tons of fish in there that probably could have been eaten, and they just never touched them. I'm not saying to go out and do this. Like, don't take advice and just be like, oh, well, you know what?
Chuck them together.
If they grow up together, everything's going to be fine. And then you might find out, well, no, some fish, it doesn't happen that way. Every once in a while, it will happen that way.
And there was a question earlier about somebody, and I don't remember who it was, had a question. You received, you ordered 6 neon tetras. I think they were even greenies. And 5 of them didn't make it. So you have 1, wondering if that one loner will be okay without its team.
Yeah, I would try to replace them if I can.
They get a little
would.
lonely.
Yeah.
You know, they like,
I would,
you know,
if possible.
friends. And then same thing with a tetra, right? Be okay without its school? Just
Well, I already
a
answered
tetra.
that one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that we would want to get more if possible. But thanks for that.
I'm just driving the point home.
Yeah. S. Martin says, got your dwarf rasboras at the last green water swap. They are turning pink, kind of cool. That's awesome. Yeah, the dwarf rasbora, it's interesting because when we bring the dwarf rasboras, they don't have the name chili rasbora. I think that's a more recognizable name. But the dwarf rasboras are every bit as pretty when they get full grown. And when they get settled in, they do. They get that nice pinkish orange color. They get that nice big black spot. It's a really pretty tiny fish.
This is a fun question. It's from Mozilla. Are clown plecos notorious for not showing themselves? I have 3 and have seen only 1 the last 6 months unless I really hunt for them. If you know what Mozilla is talking about, leave a little ghosty. Because when you get to see your clown pleco, it's a treat.
It's rewarding. So here's a fun story. When I used to have the 75 over there, I had a female clown pleco that I put in that tank not that long after I had set it up originally. And I would go a few months and not see it. And then every once in a while, it would just pop out and I would see it. Then it started to be like, oh, I haven't seen that fish in a year. It must have died. And other fish just ate it. Well, then I saw it after about a year. I'm like, oh my gosh, that fish is still in there. Here's the best part of that story. When we were breaking that tank down to put in the double stands, I saw it again after about a year. I took it out of there. I put it in another tank, forgot it was in there. And when we broke down the tank here, when we were doing this wall, now this is years later, it was still there. I hadn't seen that fish literally in years. And at this point, the female was big and she was round. And yeah, now, the flip side of that is your 20-gallon, your rummy nose rasbora tank over there, that clown pleco, when it's time to eat, is right out in front. I dropped the little pellets in there, and you've got some Adolphi cories, you have Barbados cories, the clown pleco, and some panda cories. And they're all, and it is just in there battling for food.
They are.
Now, if I get too close to the glass, he's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't need the human being that close. I'm going to go hide for a second. But he doesn't even really hide. He kind of just goes by the rock, and the minute I walk away, he's back out there fighting for the food again. So, but yeah, clown plecos are absolutely notorious for being really awesome hiders for years on end. You might not see them.
All right, here's a great question. This is fun. It's from Squibski. What's a better name for a wild type betta? Apache, Airwolf, Night Rider, or Dobson? Airwolf, that's great. Jan Michael Vincent, that's a flashback right there. Did you ever watch Airwolf?
Yeah, I remember. It was at the helicopter?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, hold on. Give me the names again.
Apache, Airwolf, Night Rider, or Dobson?
What about Water Wolf?
Water Wolf?
It's my Water Wolf, man.
If you do go with Airwolf, that would be fun. You could also call him Wolfie.
So out of those, I think I'd go Night Rider because that was probably out of those shows.
Michael. You could have called him Michael, too.
Yeah. Hal, what are you doing, Hal?
Then, of course, there's Zeus and Apollo. That would be fun, too. But that would if you had two fish. You know,
no, I think I'd
Zeus
go
and
Night
Apollo?
Rider.
Huh? Who were Zeus and Apollo?
Oh,
Anyone
that sounds
know?
extremely familiar.
They were main characters in a show.
Yeah.
Who were they?
Yeah, they were.
Who's going to get it first?
I don't know.
How about Tropic Thunder, Brian says.
Nice. Chris says, why does the cichlid world use scientific genus names, which people forget instead of popular names? Is that a good or a bad thing? Well, in the sciences, it's a great question. In the sciences, we always use scientific names because that is universal. All right, it's worldwide. Everybody knows those names. There's no chance for confusion. Common names, they can be very different. So that's thing number one, is depending on where you're at, you could have a fish that has common names. You know, you look at some of these species and you look at, common name, there's like 6 of them. All right, well, which one is the right common name? Which is the most common of the common names? And it turns out it's a regional thing. So that's an issue. There's no confusion when you come up with scientific names. The other thing is there's a lot of cichlids that don't have a common name, right? Or the common name is the scientific name. And yeah, in the cichlid world, when I go to the GCCA meetings, we very rarely, I think, ever use common names because most of them, you go by the scientific name. When I will use the common name of a fish if the name is well known and it truly is a common name. Otherwise, I'm generally using scientific names in a lot of what I do.
And yes, we've got Jennifer guest Dobermans. Does that help you?
No.
Bruce, Magnum PI.
You know, I was going to say that for some reason, and I didn't, so I can't take credit for it.
They were what was his name? John Hillerman?
Don't ask me. I don't know.
It was Magnum. Worked for, what was his name in the show though? His name was Hillerman.
I barely watched that show. I have no idea.
You said you rarely watched it?
Magnum PI? No, it wasn't. That was a show for chicks, man. That wasn't.
Yeah, but it had a cool car and like helicopters.
It did have a cool
stuff.
car, but it wasn't as cool as Dukes of Hazzard or 18.
Oh no.
And it wasn't as cool as Chips. I mean, they were riding around on motorcycles all day. I know. There's going to be a lot of people out there that disagree with me, and it's okay.
I remembered from Chips. Remember I told you about this? That there was one episode that I remember that they were driving, and then somebody got into an accident, and then they had to recreate it because the sun got in their eyes.
Oh, the Chips episode.
Right?
Yeah.
So the other day, he was watching an episode, and I'm like, is that it? I don't know. He finally saw the part, and I said, you have finally seen the episode I've been blabbing about all this time.
Binge watching Chips. That's where my life is right now. Shamu says, put that lonely rose line from the Vieja tank into the 125 nano tank as a centerpiece giant. LOI, I plan to do something similar with my 240 in the future. Nanos and rose lines. See, that might be cool, except I bring in rose lines all the time, and right now, right there, in a 40-gallon breeder, I've got 60 of them. So, I think, because now that I'm thinking about it, once they get through the rest of their quarantine, and they're going to be done here pretty soon, I might move 4 or 5 into that 125 because I do really want to have a proper rose line shark display. But the only thing is that tank needs to get rescaped. So I need to do that first. And then I think I will move some rose lines. But even if I don't move that group in, we bring them in almost every couple of months. But I need to get that group together because that rose line shouldn't be by itself. I agree with you on that.
And his name was Higgins.
Okay.
Yeah. And he reported to Robin Masters. I totally forgot about that name. Great job, everybody. R. Morgan says, hi from Wales, UK.
Hello.
Thank you
Very
for
cool. It's a
everything.
late
That's
night
so
for you.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're super early. Probably, what, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that?
Yep.
Where's Catherine? We want to see Catherine. Thank you for everything you have taught me because of you setting up a 55-gallon Apisto tank.
Nice.
Any stocking recommendations? Thanks again. Glad to finally catch a live.
Yeah, you've got
Welcome.
a million options there. So pretty much all your Tetras, 55-gallon. Yeah, so you could do big schools of Tetras, maybe pick 2 or 3 of your favorite Tetras and do 10 of each. You've got Cory cats. You have, again, you got your Otocinclus, your clown Plecos. Bristlenose Plecos are fine. There's a lot of really cool bristlenose that you could potentially do. So you got a lot of options. You know, even some pearl gouramis at the top, or even a dwarf gourami. Very cool. Whip says, I've got both spotted and striped Raphael that have I have seen about 3 years. Not even sure where if they're still alive.
Right.
We are lucky because our Raphael, he's out all. He's just too big. He's not capable of hiding anymore. He was in the 150. But what's interesting about Raphael cats is it is common for them, at least it was for ours for a long time, where it would just absolutely binge eat like crazy to the point where it was like, dude, you're getting a little too big there, man. I don't think you're gonna be able to pack any more food in there. But then it would almost go into like a hibernation where we wouldn't see it for 6 months. To the point where I'm like, yeah, maybe that thing's dead. I don't know. Because there's got tons of driftwood in the 150 and all kinds of rocks. You're like, I'm not going to go rooting up and trying to, get all this stuff moving around. There's clown loaches in there and everything. So we'd go 6 months and not see that fish. And then all of a sudden, it'd be like, oh, there he is. And he's eating like a crazy fish again. And then it stopped doing that. And then it would come out pretty much every time we feed it. Now it's in the 125 with the Vieja. And it's always out. It just kind of bullies its way. And for those of you who have never kept a Raphael cat before, they are heavily armored catfish. I mean, you got to really be careful with those fish because the dorsal and the pectoral fins have spikes. And I'm not talking about like, they are spikes. Also, all along the side of that fish, if you look up a Raphael cat, there are little spikes that come out the side of its body. Very, very peaceful fish, extremely peaceful. Also a very small mouth. So for a catfish that gets to be 7 or 8 inches and actually very round, it's not aggressive and it doesn't go out of its way to eat other fish. And the only downside is that if you get a shy one, you might not see it for a few months on end. But they do get big. That would be a fish I'd want at least a 75-gallon for.
Whip says, this is mostly on me, but I have a problem with scientific names because I used to think it was just big shot fish keepers talking down to me. Even though I don't believe that anymore. I can't shake it. Well, Whip, tonight we're talking about small fish.
Like Nanochromis splendens,
And big fish.
Neolampologus multifasciatus, Kribensis pulcher.
I should have never read that
Microgeophagus.
to him.
Yeah, Apistogramma mendezi, Apistogramma cacatoides.
He'll probably, after this stream, look up like the
Nanocara
longest
anomala.
fish names and
We were
memorize
just talking
them
about
to
those.
talk.
Dichrosis filamentosus. Yeah, we were just talking about those. Oh, Carl, that's a good point. What about the community post? You know, did you even do it? You didn't do it.
Yes, I did.
What did you answer?
I answered the, wait, what was the question again? I answered, it was the first, I think it was the first. It was the first or the second option.
You don't
Hold on a
even
second.
know what you answered
No,
anyway.
I don't even remember
Carl,
what video I did
You're
today.
right. The post, the community. By the way, you got to answer that post. I need the votes,
I did.
man.
I
Not you,
answered it.
everybody else.
It was not the number one pick that I picked.
But in the community post that I did, the poll that I did yesterday, I did which movie had the best fish tank. Now, I couldn't do endless options, so I basically picked Christmas Vacation, Mr. Mom, and Lethal Weapon 2, and then I said other. But there was all kinds of people like, oh, what about this? What about that? There were some that people shared. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, that's...
Well, I almost got a little smarmy with the Finding Nemo because that's saltwater. Boo! But I didn't want, if people don't know my sense of humor, I didn't want to give like thumbs down, like laughing faces. And
But
they'd be like,
I
"You're
don't
so
think
mean."
people realize how close I was to putting an option there that says, and nobody mentioned it. Nobody. This is disappointing. I'm going to get you, sucker. I was this close to putting it in there.
Really, I don't remember that movie though.
I'm going to get you, sucker.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
Does anybody remember the part that I'm talking about? Where were the fish in that movie? There's probably like one person in this whole thing, both now and probably in the playbacks, who are going to know that movie and know what I'm talking about, where that could have been an option. Where were the fish? And I'm going to get you, sucker. It was the best.
Oh, dear.
And I was going to put it in there, but I figured nobody's going to know. Second floor, what's up? Peter, yes. Love it. That
In
is
the
true.
shoes?
In the
Seriously?
shoes. Yeah, he comes out. He's in JP. All right, we got some people up.
In the booth.
This is
Brian.
why.
Wow.
This is why we're here. This is why we're together.
That's why.
Because there are people here who know that in I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, he had fish in the soles of his shoes that were glass. And then they broke as he was walking.
Oh, bummer.
Yep. Lefty. Oh, yeah. This is awesome. I'm so proud of you. Of all the things that we talked about tonight, that warmed my heart more than anything. You could have rattled off like 67 scientific names of crazy fish. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But this, Rain, and everybody else, yeah, I love it. Fly Guy. That's right. Yep. Yeah. That was his name, Fly Guy.
Okay.
What are all these pins for? This one's for typing? Yeah. Shot me in my bunion. Oh, I love. He OG'd. OG'd. What is that? He overgolded.
You use that quote all the time.
Yep. Yeah, I don't use it all the time. What am I
Like
going to use?
literally every day. Not really.
Okay. Yeah. I'm walking around being like, oh man, that guy
OG.
overgolded.
OG.
Yeah. So.
Shamu Aquatics says rescaping a tank with roseline sharks present, not fun. They go absolutely
Oh, they go
psycho
crazy.
if your hands get too close to them.
And they will jump. That is one of the big things too with roseline sharks. And I've heard this a number of times at swaps because people that, hey man, I got those roseline sharks from me. I can't find half of them. And I'm like, oh no. Just by chance, does your tank have a lid on it? No. Yeah, they really like to jump. I mean, and we learn it's something as we're catching all these fish, and the hundreds and hundreds of species, and if not more, over the last couple of years, you really start to learn which ones like that.
Yep.
Those Siamese algae eaters, and believe it or not, one of the biggest jumpers that we have are the shell dwellers. I mean, they will right out of the top of a catch cup or a small tank, if it's not covered, they absolutely love to jump. But the roseline sharks are probably pretty close to our number one. I'm trying to think, is there a fish that jumps more? The Maltese are right there. Maltese and the Maltese and the roselines are probably our two biggest jumpers. Siamese algae eaters would be right there. Are there any others where you're like, oh man, try to pick them up off the floor?
Yeah, some of them where you have to, as soon as you get them in the catch cup, you have to have, I will even have another catch cup directly on top because my hand, they're going to get out of there.
Keep jumping until they find a way through your fingers too. Madison says coolies. Coolies don't jump for us.
Killifish jump.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. But we don't have to worry about
Clown
that. but-
killies, whenever I've had
Oh my
clown
gosh,
killies,
yeah.
if you get like a little like centimeter opening.
Yeah, they find it. I remember Luke
goodbye.
had a little 10-gallon in his room, and we put some clown killies in there. I think we had like 4 or 5, and within 2 days, I'm like, they're all gone. And I start looking around. They're on the carpet, and there was I'm like, where did they? There was a little cutout where a hose and like the cord for the heater and the hose for maybe an air stone or something went through the top of that the back plastic piece, and they found a way out of there. It's absolutely insane, crazy.
Crazy.
Good point. And we said, yeah, ballast sharks. Oh my gosh. Yeah, those love to jump as well. Yeah. Tinfoil barbs would be another one that love to jump. Absolutely right. R. Morgan says, thank you. I'm trying to find some green neons to go in the tank with apistos. I want brightly colored fish in there. Can peacock gudgeon go with them? And the gourami, I was thinking electric blue. So I don't know what size tank. I think I might have missed that detail, but peacock gudgeons with apistos in a large enough tank. I wouldn't do it in a 20 necessarily in case the apistos start to breed. In a 3 or 4 foot tank, I don't think I'd have a problem with it. I don't think I would really worry about it. Gourami, thinking electric blue, so that's a dwarf gourami. That could be a bigger issue because they can be a little bit aggressive. And so you might wind up in a situation where it's chasing other fish around, possibly the peacock gudgeon, maybe the apistos and the dwarf gourami fight a little bit. But again, if you got a large tank, like a 4 foot tank, it's probably 55 gallon, then you're most likely fine. Yeah, most likely going to be okay.
Whip says, last try here. Red frontosa, shell or rock dweller, Lake Tanganyika tank mates. What you got?
Wait, red frontosa?
Yeah,
So that's the fish that's in the tank?
I guess. Shell or rock dweller, Lake Tanganyika tank mates.
I would probably, this is going to sound, if I was going to put anything in that tank with red frontosa, given their max size and how large their mouth is, I might opt for large feather fins. And I mean like the Furcifer rosebas, those ones that can get 6-7 inches, really fast fish, upper water, faster swimmers. I would not trust, I most likely the shell dwellers are going to be, and even the rock dwellers to a certain extent might be sneaky enough to stay away from the frontosas, but they are definitely fish food for them if the frontosas can get a hold of them. So you could try it. You know, you could try something like Ornatus or Lelupai, tons and tons of rocks. They're cichlids. They're very smart fish. And so they will probably avoid the frontosas when they come around. They'll just go back into the rocks. Same with shell dwellers. They might very well just go back into their shells when the frontosas are around. So you could try it. And let's face it, around our area, multis are cheap. Most of the shell dwellers are pretty cheap. So you could try it. But long term, I think I would want like the larger featherfin cichlids.
I got 2 more I'm going to grab because they're right next to each other and they're really fun questions.
Oh.
All right, this is from Sylvie. I have a 45-gallon bow front tank with 2 hangbacks and 2 sponge filters. Right now I have 20 pandas, 3 honey gouramis, 6 tetras, cardinals, 2 nearite snails, and a few female guppy. Looking to add more cardinals and maybe green neons. Do it.
In a 40?
In a 45, yeah, bow front.
Yeah.
How many should I get? Any suggestions for another schooling fish to add to it?
So looking to add
Cardinals, green neons, maybe?
Sure. I mean, you could
Like how many?
do probably 8 each of those. I would think start there, see what it looks like, give the tank a little bit of time to catch up, and then, yeah, that could work for sure.
And Oink asks, have you found the growth rate per year of the blue and green phantoms to be about average for Plecos? I have a baby blue, and it's a stunning wee Pleco. I'm in no rush for it to grow. Neither would I.
Wait, what was the question?
The growth rate for per year of the blue and green phantom Plecos, is it about average or is it slower?
It's slow. And somebody else has asked me if I've ever done, Brett said, have you ever kept a blue phantom Pleco? We have at least 2 of them in the fish. I always look over there because that's where the fish room is. We have at least 2 of them in the fish room right now. And I don't know if I've ever had a slower growing Pleco because the blue phantoms that we have, I think I bought it maybe 2.5 inches and maybe they're 4 inches right now. And we've had them for a couple of years. So really expensive, hide a lot. Every once in a while, I'll see the blue phantom in the 125 VA hot tank. I think I mentioned this story a week or two ago, but we talked about the clown plecos earlier. That's why I generally don't get really expensive plecos, because a lot of them like to hide. The only exception was our snowball pleco, which was insanely awesome, and then it passed away in the 75 gallon a few months ago. That was really sad. Allison, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. Really appreciate it. Because of you, we got Brian, and we've got Emma, and we've got House of Sass, and Guppy Town, and Aquazen, all brand new prime timers because of you. Thank you so much for doing that. That's pretty darn awesome. I saw something. Yes, I did. And I wanted to answer it, and then it went away. It did. Well, it got sucked up into the thing here.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Michael says, my crib pair just had their second brood, much, much larger than the first. Oh, yeah. Will they eventually become good parents? None made it more than 3 weeks from the first. Yeah, they will become better parents. And like I was saying earlier, just keep an eye. You might have to separate them, because you absolutely could run into an issue where you're like, what am I going to do with hundreds of cribs? Because they can be a little tough to move, and that can be problematic. So when you take them to pet stores, sometimes they're like, I don't know how many of these I'm going to be able to sell. And they start having a lot of fry. Yeah.
Mike Fish wants to know, what made you get a low boy instead of a 120 gallon?
Aesthetics. So on both sides, I wanted to be able to see all the tanks. So when I was on camera, on the fish room side where the multis are, you can still see all the 40s. It still looks open. It looks airy. You can see the top 75, where the 120 would have blocked everything. Same thing here. And I thought about it. We discussed possibly changing this to a 120, but then it would have been, the 120 would have probably been all the way up to these shelves up here, and you would have not seen most of the other gallery fish tanks. So that was the only reason. If it was the only tank I was going to have, without a doubt, I would have gone the 120, because the 120 is the same footprint as this 50. It's just 2.5 times taller, because instead of being 10 inches tall, it would be about 25 or so inches tall. So I would have gone that direction 100%. We had the 4-foot 150. I actually thought at one point of keeping that, since I already had the stand built, reinforcing this a little bit more with center braces and putting the 150 here, but that's 30 inches tall, and that would have basically been all the way up to the top of the top of the screen right now. So that's why I didn't do that. But if it was just one tank, I would not do the 50-gallon lowboy, because why take up all that space and only have a 10-inch tall tank, right? If you're going to maximize your ability to pack tanks into a small place. Wet Sleeves, thank you so much for being a member the last 13 months. Congratulations, you're over a year now. Some of my coolie loaches have greenish bellies. Are they holding eggs? I don't know. I don't know enough about coolie loach and birthing to know whether or not they are holding eggs necessarily. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. That's a good question. Blake says, what are your histories with fish keeping? How did you get started and get where you are today? Well, I've been keeping fish since I was 6 years old. That's why it sounds weird when I say I've got 44 years of fish keeping experience. Well, it's because I started when I was 6. First fish was a one-eyed black fancy goldfish that I put in a goldfish bowl, and it was an awesome fish named Popeye. Very appropriate name. And I've been keeping fish ever since. I went from a fish bowl to a 10-gallon, kept that tank, had a 20, kept that, had a 35-gallon. My parents were really supportive. In fact, I think they got, in some cases, almost as excited about it as I did. It was a nice memory. I could go there to the fish store with my dad almost every Saturday for a while. We went and we'd pick out fish. You started when you met me, more or less.
Pretty much.
Kind of, because when you get in a relationship with me, and I think when we met, I had a one-bedroom apartment, but I still had the 35 hex, which I'd had for, oh my gosh, years and years and years.
The infamous 35 hex.
Yeah, and a 75-gallon going at the time. But I couldn't do a whole lot more with a one-bedroom apartment. Plus, at that point, I had 2 dogs, too. And that little 1-bedroom apartment. And then, yeah, you've been keeping fish ever since. And what was it, about 2015 or so? 2015, early 2016. The fish room on the side that you see with the Maltese, I built that out. But before that, this basement had this side. We had a couch down here, a TV. Some of the early videos, like the really early ones where you see me working in the fish room, you might still see like a TV and tanks on either side. I think there might have been. It started out with a couple fish tanks and like everybody else. And there was like maybe 7 or 8 on this side. Then I got the other side of the fish room, put a sink down there, and actually built out a proper fish room. Then made this side a fish room, and then of course, late last year we tore it down and then made this gallery instead. So, yeah. It's been pretty darn fun. Brett, thank you very much for gifting 5 Primetime Aquatics memberships. That's pretty cool. Thank you. Now we got Blake, we got Caitlin, and we got Madison, and we got new friends and hip hop. All prime timers now. Thank you. Oh gosh, you got to ignore. Well, don't ignore, but guess who's here?
Oh boy.
The Puka Man. We go way back.
The Puka Man.
Yep, we go way back. Trust me, he doesn't have 30 fish in a glass bowl. If he did, I would go over to his house right after this live stream, and I would take all of his fish away. And then I would tell his wife what a bad fish keeper he is, and she would smack him around because that's what she does. She smacks him around. So, yeah, I could tell stories.
Would you take the 30 fish and put them in here, or what would you do with them?
What would I do? Well, it depends if the 30 fish are cool or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I'd have to put them in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that crazy guy. All right, everybody. I think, on that happy note, I think it's about time to wrap up this fine evening. It is now 9:30 Central Standard Time, and probably a different time if you're in a different time zone like that. I figure that all out in my brain. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody who gifted the memberships, and to all the new members who are here, and for the super chats, and our moderators. Thank you so much for Whip and Second Floor and Oink, and I don't know who else was here because this thing was moving kind of fast at one point.
And he was all out of whack. He was
and
all
I
like.
was out of whack, after showing up late and everything. But yes, thank you so much for being here. We will see you same time, same place next week. Be thinking of your questions. Write them down. If we didn't get a chance to answer them tonight, I'm sorry. Write them down for next week, and I promise we will do our best we can to answer even more. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
Nighty night.
Bye-bye, everybody. Let me press some buttons.